So, Ayinde, what do you want to talk about today?
Something that's probably on our minds all the time, content and content strategy. But in particular, I've been thinking about the last weekend, I've been thinking about content strategy for lazy people.
Oh,
You could switch out lazy and put busy if you think the moniker might be too degrading for yourself. So, but something you probably would have spoken about a couple other times before in the past, and something that people think about all the time. But it really has to do with how do you repurpose content so that you're in a constant hamster wheel trying to produce new content every single day. So just a few thoughts on that. What did you want to talk about?
I'm also going to talk about content, but a different type of content. I want to talk about transformation-based client testimonials. So how do you... Yeah, transformation-based, yeah.
That sounds big. Maybe you should go first.
Okay, I'll do that. But what I'll do, because I know it's probably going to be big, I'm going to have to break this into 2 parts, I'm sure. So I'm probably going to do half this week and half next week, because it's kind of a big topic. So let's talk a bit about how to get transformation-based client testimonials.
Well, maybe you should clarify what that means for us.
Let me start off by saying, well, last week I was speaking with a potential client, and actually this week too we were speaking with a potential client, and that whole idea of getting evidence from your client came up. So in order for people to buy from you, the key thing that they need is evidence. They need evidence that you could deliver a service. They need evidence that you have a good product. And if you have a product-based business, you have the actual physical product. And then of course the customers will leave things like reviews, they will leave comments on your social media, and also people can even create their own reviews of it with video, which is user-generated content. So they might do that if you have a product. But if you have a service-based business, you don't really have something physical. You don't have a product that the client can physically touch. So you have to approach it in a slightly different way. But what you get to offer your client is an experience. You get to offer your clients something that is valuable to them that solves a particular problem, but it's not always tangible. It might involve tangible things. Like, for example, if you're an events person, you may have to do decoration or move chairs or book a physical building, but it's really the experience that people are coming for in that instance. And if you want to get testimonials from those clients, you might have to take a different approach. So just like the physical product is evidence of what you've made, the reviews, the comments, and user-generated content about that product is evidence of how people will feel about you, right? And so when you have a service-based business, you can get these reviews and these comments on your content. But one of the key places or one of the key pieces of content that you want to have and create as evidence of great service is client testimonials. So if you want to have someone come to you or come to your website or to your social media pages, and they want some type of evidence that you can do the thing that you do, what you want is other clients talking about that particular service.
So let's go back to the title now. So client-based transformation.
How to get transformation-based client testimonials.
Transformation-based. So
Transformation-based, yes.
So this is where clients are going to talk about how your product or service transform their business.
Right, yeah. So that's the whole crux of the matter. The whole crux of the matter is that there's a particular type of testimonial that you want. You don't want a generic testimonial, but you want a testimonial based on the transformation that you have brought to the client. And that is better evidence. Okay, so let's just talk about why do you actually need the testimonials. You need the testimonials because a well-crafted testimonial gives people social proof. And social proof just basically is a psychological phenomenon that where people emulate the actions of other people in order to reflect correct behavior. So social proof in a line might be staying in the line and staying in the order that you came. So when you see somebody else do that, then you have evidence that this is the correct behavior, and so your behavior will reflect that. If you go into a building and everybody has their shoes off at the door, That is social proof to tell you how to behave. So you would also take your shoes off. Now, you could ignore that, but any regular person will look around and would say, well, how am I supposed to behave in this instance? And so when you hear former clients of a service-based business come and tell you what the experience was like, what transformation happened in their own business or their own household or whatever kind of service that you give, then it is evidence to you, this is how I have to treat with this person. I can trust them. I can give them my money and not look back. I can depend on them to deliver this. It tells you how to behave. So that's what you want to do. Testimonials essentially train your clients on how to interact with you. But at the core of that is they're building up trust. Yeah. There's a big joke about that when it came to air fryers. Like a certain time when you had an air fryer, you just had to talk about it. Like, oh, this air fryer is so nice and air fryer is so healthy. And that was social proof to everyone. People just started to get air fryers because everyone was getting air fryer. I had an air fryer. It stopped working. You have an air fryer, right? And I'm sure you got your air fryer because somebody said, oh, this is so great. Great. You could fry things. You don't need any oil.
Yeah, some kind of influence like that. Definitely the oil thing was a consideration.
Right. You see? And so
now I'm looking for a new one because I want a glass air fryer now, so we can stay away from the PFAs. But that's a whole conversation.
Right, that's a whole different conversation. But you got influenced by social proof, by somebody saying this thing is a good thing. And that's a testimonial about the particular benefits of this product based on somebody else using it.
So are you saying, is it that you deliberately craft these testimonials? And
yes.
You go out to these clients and you ask them to create a testimonial based on that transformation? Or you help them to create a testimonial?
Correct. No, there are two ways to do it. You could do it yourself to get it from the client. That is a little more difficult, or you can hire someone to do it on your behalf because clients tend to be more honest about you when they are not talking to you directly. So you will get a more honest feedback usually if someone does the interviews on your behalf. And that's what a testimonial essentially is, an interview about how was this service. The problem with that is that most people, when they're asking for testimonials, what they do is that they go and they say something like, how was my service? Give me some feedback or give me a testimonial now. And that's not the correct way to do it, because even if you give excellent service, what somebody might say is that you were great, you were easy to work with, we would hire you again, right? If you have 1,000 pieces of feedback and they all say things like that, after a while, it doesn't really explain how you help or how you brought transformation to the client.
Yeah, for sure. So it just comes like either they believe it and it just sounds sweet and actually doesn't produce any kind of internal change, or they don't believe it and they say, well, that's just a mama guy. Which in Trini terms means they're kind of fooling you.
Yeah, they're just making, and reviews are really hard to believe. So this is why I am advocating for your client being on video doing a testimonial. That is one of the more powerful ways to give your social proof and to get these testimonials. Now, those testimonials where the client says, oh, you were really good, those are good, but they don't speak really to what made the client choose you and what would make them choose you again. They definitely don't help to address the pain that your potential client is feeling and guide them into a decision to choose you. It doesn't help them do that because all they're hearing is generic good things, but they are not seeing themselves in the shoes of this person doing the testimonial who has worked with you. But there is a way to create these testimonials that is more likely to turn someone, a customer or potential client who's looking for a solution into somebody who would actually hire and work with you. And that's what we're going to go through today. And that is what a transformation-based client testimonial is.
All right. Okay. So tell us, what does that look like?
Okay. So let's go through that now. I have to say that this is something I've been thinking about for a while. And one of the people who helped inspire this was somebody who, when I was thinking about doing courses, I used to follow this guy called Jacques. Can't remember his last name, but he is the online course guy. And he was one of the people who was speaking about how to get testimonials from people who have done your courses. And so I took some of what he did and I adopted it. And I made adjustments there and added in our own experience and came up with a set of things that will allow for someone to get their own transformation-based client testimonials. All right, so some things to note. The first thing is that you do want to get your clients on video. You do want to get your clients on video. Why do you think that might be important, Ayinde?
I think, well, video is a very good communication tool. It engages different senses. It also tends to trigger more emotions because you're engaging these different senses. You can communicate a lot in a short space of time. Mm-hmm. So there are certain benefits to using video to communicate. Anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I would add to that seeing the person, the actual person, immediately makes it more believable.
Yeah, for sure. Because the person is willing to commit their image to this thing. It's not random John. So if you see a text quotation, you see John. John could be an actual customer, or they might have made up John. But if somebody's willing to go on video and you could actually track down this person and say, oh, that's the person who gave the testimonial, you're very correct. I would believe it more. That's true.
Yeah, and that is not an easy thing to get someone to agree to. It's a high friction activity because you have to book them in a certain time. You have to sit down with them. You may have to get somebody to do it for you. So the fact that they would commit their time to do this for you as a service provider or as a collaborative partner in doing some kind of project is a big signal already that you're worth doing this for. So it makes it immediately more believable if you can get your clients on video saying good things about you, right? Yeah. The second thing is that obviously it's more engaging and it builds more trust faster. So having someone talk about the thing as opposed to just reading it is more engaging. And so it makes it seem like it's coming from a better trusted source. It's more trustworthy. And the third thing I would think that's important is that it can communicate tone and emotion and personality. While we were doing a content strategy for one of our past clients and we were doing their client research about what is good about the company, one of their clients actually said the first time that this thing worked, they wanted to cry. Our client's client said that on camera. And I found that was such a massive statement. And for them, that was a big deal, that the solution that they were looking for all of this time, they were finally able to get it. And it was such a massive moment in their business that they wanted to cry over it. It made them emotional that they figured this thing out. And the company did that. So you get that kind of tone, personality, and emotion if you get someone on video. So let's move on to the second thing. What don't you want to say when you're asking for a testimonial? How don't you want to approach it? And later on in part 2, I'll give you steps as to how to approach it. What do you think are some of the bad ways you can ask for a client testimonial, Ayinde?
Okay, I'm in character now. Watch my big mouth now.
Yeah, probably that might not be.
Yeah, maybe that one. No, I need a big up. I need a forward. Although a forward might work if you're a DJ.
It might work if you're a DJ. But it's one of the things that you have to know how to ask. Mm-hmm. How to ask for a client testimonial. So you don't want to say, hey, this time I did now, or you don't want to say, get a semi test. You don't want to say, just send me a testimonial now. Or even if you say, please send me a testimonial, that might not be the best way to do it. That is too vague and it puts too much pressure on the client to come up with something to say, even if they're pleased with your service. Right. Because they know how to formulate, what am I supposed to say about this last month engagement with this person? It can make them...
might necessarily highlight the thing that you want to highlight because you want to talk to a particular target audience in a particular way. And they may not talk about that aspect of the service. So, correct. I guess... Well, go ahead and tell us what you're thinking, because I'm having some thoughts now. Mm-hmm. I guess what you want to do is create a structure that could allow the client to speak into, so that you could capture very specific responses inside or changes inside of their business that resulted from the service or product that you sold to them.
That is exactly it. You hit the nail directly on the head. You want to be so specific that it speaks to the exact things you want to highlight about your service or your business that the potential clients need to know. You want to be very, very specific about that, right? And you can't leave that in the client's hands. You have to craft a structure or questions in order to get that out of them, because it's a high effort activity, right? If you're asking them to do a self-recorded video, that's a high effort activity. You're going to make them think, and they may not be accustomed. You may be talking to a client whose business has nothing to do with media or recording, and they've never been on camera before, and you're asking them for this thing, and they just don't know where to start. And that in itself is a problem. You may not get it at the end of the day. They may tell you, I'll send it for you next week. I'll send it for you next week. And next week turn into a month turn into 6 months, etc. You never get the testimonial. And the longer you wait to get that testimonial, the less the feeling is there. The feeling fades away, as everything does with time. So you want to get them as soon as possible, which is something we'll go through in part 2. So one of the things that you could do, and I will talk about the questions you have to ask in the next part, but one of the things that you could do is do something as simple as invite your client to a 15-minute video call, as many of us would say, like a Zoom call or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, whatever you pick your poison. You invite them to a call. This is a low barrier ask for them. You just tell them to hop on. They don't have to set up the meeting. It makes it much easier for them to do. And all they have to do is come into the space that you've created for them. You can control the quality and the flow of the conversation. And you should have prepared very specific questions. You should have prepared very specific questions. And of course, you don't just spring that on them. You let them know from beforehand that you are going to record it, and you get permission, and talk about what you're going to use it for. I'm going to use this on my social media. I'm going to use it on my website. I'm going to use it when I'm presenting to other clients, and make sure that they're comfortable with that, because they might be very happy with the work, but they might not be comfortable doing that.
Send them the questions beforehand.
That's a good question. Some clients do request the questions beforehand, and that's fine. You can send it to them beforehand. A lot of times the real emotion comes out in the actual conversation. So that may take away some of that. But if the only way that they're going to agree to it is by doing it by getting the questions beforehand, or if they think they're going to answer the questions better by knowing what they are, it's fine to send it to them ahead of time, so that they can prepare themselves. And some people just want to know what you're going to ask me, so they wouldn't be so shocked at whatever question it is, and maybe they may have company policies that may clash with something that you might ask, and they want to know ahead of time whether that is going to happen and not embarrass themselves or you during the recording. Yeah. And that's important, right? So the final thing I'll talk about is the emotional and the practical outcomes of getting these transformation-based client testimonials. And there's some things that you have to consider as a business owner and somebody who is making this type of content in order for you to get more business, to create social proof to get more business. So the first thing is that you are not selling the results. You're not selling the deliverables. So like in our case, let's just suppose as a video production company, we produce a video for someone. Of course, we could take that video, put it in our portfolio, share it on social media, and people will see what we have done. But that is the deliverable. That is the outcome. A better thing to talk about will be the impact of the video. How did it reach people? How did it change their business? How did it accomplish the goal for which it was created? Maybe it's an event, and maybe part of the package of the event is to get feedback from the participants. Mm-hmm. And that is very valuable to the client. So the actual video is not critical, but what the people say in the video is very, very critical. And they can use that for promotional purposes later on. That might be the change that we're delivering to them, right? And when you're asking the questions, there's some important things to consider. You have to ask questions that reveal the emotional journey of your client. What is the things like the confidence, the freedom, the excitement of working with you? You have to focus on things like the benefits or the unexpected benefits of things, the new opportunities that they encounter from working with you, whether they have a reduce stress, happier teams, whether they save money or anything of that sort, that is something that you might want to consider to focus on. And one of the big things that you also want to focus on is the impact on the employees in the business, if that was part of what you had to deliver, or impact on yourself as somebody who engaged this company, this service-based company, because personal impact is also important. What was it like for them to interface with you? And what was it like for them to have these meetings and have this engagement with you over time?
Would you say is okay, or not even just okay, but would you encourage people talking about how they felt and how the interaction and the engagement and the delivery of the service, how it made them feel? Is that an important thing to capture in a testimonial?
Yeah, as humans, we tend to think we're logical, but we are not logical first. We are first emotional. Right. And so having that might not necessarily be pushed to the forefront, but weaving that emotional part into what you capture is essential, is important, because we connect with those things. We connect with somebody saying, I've had this problem for 10 years, now I have relief. And it's made me extremely happy. Some people are like, well, it's made me $1 million. They're concerned about the money, which is important too. Mm-hmm. But that feeling of the thing going away or the problem being solved or this kind of victory in the inside of your business that you may not always get, but based upon working with somebody, purchasing a product or service or interacting with some kind of service provider has brought you, that's important to capture. And your goal is really is to capture the story arc, right? What life looked like before they interacted with you, what changed because of the service that you offered.
Right.
What was their state before? And that's why it's called transformation based. What their state was before and what life looked like after they interact with you. So when the client talks about those things, you're going to focus on what caused that to happen. What was the state of your business before, and how did they end up in a new place, the better place that they are? And that is the transformation. I'll stop there this week. I'm not going to go further than that this week. Next week, we will explore the how of it, what to ask, and there's a 3-phase structure to approaching client-based testimonials, which I'll also go through next time we talk. But this is a good kind of on-ramp this week for transformation-based client testimonials.
Good. So we're looking forward to next week and getting some more information, discussing that a little bit more. Moving into the second half of this discussion.
Let me ask this question. So, Ayinde, what did you want to talk about today?
All right. So we're talking about content strategy for the lazy. Last time we spoke, we talked about Gary Vee and his 3 or 4 times an hour posting and insane frequencies and managing that. And today kind of relates to that because it talks about how can you still have to produce content, even if you're not going to the insane levels or high levels like a Gary Vee, for example. You still have to produce content. And you want to produce content at a certain level, at a certain consistent frequency. So I'm going to talk about how you can repurpose content, and a big part of what we've talked about with our clients in the past is repurposing, and we will develop a repurposing map so that you can create one piece of what we will call core content and then turn that into relevant content for different platforms and different users, which can then take you for a period of time. Yeah, so it's difficult. So you risk burnout, as we mentioned before, you risk frequency gaps, you risk a number of different things trying to produce all new content or all throughout the week, all throughout the month. So the thing is to figure out what that core piece of content is. That's the first part, because your core content will then drive all of the other content. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about that and related to what we are actually doing. I'm actually going to grade this podcast against this particular structure of how to create content for the lazy. So I'm just going to do like a brief informal grading of do we do this? So we preaching it right now, right? So I'm going to preach. But at the same time, you have to say, well, do you follow what you preach? All right, so core content. So that's the first thing. So one thing you just talked about, which is a testimonial video. A testimonial video, if it's long enough, could also be core content. But let's say the core piece of content for us is this podcast. So the It's Good to Relate podcast is core content. Some other things that form good core content would be like a live show or some other long form video like an interview, a video essay. So something that you will consider long form, something in excess of 15 minutes, maybe closer to 30 minutes. So in our case, that long form piece is this podcast. So we spend on average 30 to 45 minutes having a discussion. A lot of times people will not necessarily commit to 30 to 45 minutes, but inside of there might be content that they could commit to and will expose them to your brand, to your products, to your services. All right. So if we walk through that process, so we capture in this podcast. Now, a lot of times podcasts could be audio first. If you're going direct to Spotify, going direct to Apple. So that's your first piece of content. You could then, which most people are doing now, is creating video podcasts. So this is being recorded, both audio and video. So the video can now go to a different platform. So you started off with Spotify, or you started off with Apple Podcasts. Then you go to YouTube where you put your video podcast. Although some of these podcast services are now going after video because they notice they're losing traction to YouTube because a lot of people are just creating their podcast for YouTube now. So that's your main thing. Then you can break that up into clips and post for LinkedIn. So key insights, maybe 60 seconds out of each thing, and text that comes from it to go along. As far as our grading, we don't do that right now. We would love to be able to
LinkedIn?
We don't do we don't do the clips on LinkedIn from this podcast.
We do it. We just don't post it on the company page. You talking on my LinkedIn page every week. In fact, a little plug here. Somebody actually thought you were AI, and which is a big joke, by the way. I will have to tell you about that.
That could be really good, or that could be really bad.
What you started was really what? I don't believe that, and they skipped the video because they thought it was AI. But anyway, go ahead.
Is it that they don't think Juma could actually be talking to a real person? What's that about? That's a whole different conversation.
That's a whole different story. But go ahead.
So LinkedIn post clips from LinkedIn for LinkedIn. We're doing that. So you take the bigger, longer form video, you break it down into clips. You can also do shorter, like 30 seconds that you could do on Instagram Reels or TikTok, depending on who your target audience is and what kind of content you have. And then you can turn that into text because we're having a conversation. Of course, that could turn into text. We do this because we have two places where we have text, the blurb for the podcast, and we also have our blog, which some of the articles become articles on the blog. Yeah. So that's written. And so that could then be shortened or lengthened depending on the style of your blog. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channels or platforms, and you've only created one piece of content so far. And you can stagger how you release those. So let's say we do this live today. The video will go up a little bit later this evening or maybe tomorrow.
It's not going to go up this evening. It's 100% not going to go up this evening, but it'll go up soon.
Right. So let's say it goes up tomorrow. The following day, you might have clips. By the end of the week, you might have an article. So you're not under pressure to create something new to basically have content available for the rest of the week. Depending on how you space it, you could have content for the next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, maybe even the next 4 weeks. And we do this every week. So we are always, right now, we're deep in content. We need help producing.
True.
Because we can take this and turn them into different things. And so let me talk a little bit about the tools. Anything you want to add there, Juma? Just in terms of that content repurposing.
No, no. I think this is a good track. I think I guess you'll talk about the distribution platforms later on. Maybe that might be something you'll touch on. I'm assuming you're referencing here the map that we created.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it called again? Well, you give the name. I.
Yeah, I forgot our actual brand name, but essentially it's a content repurposing map.
Oh, the zero waste content.
Zero waste. That's the idea.
Right. Zero waste content map. Zero waste content repurposing map is what we call it.
Correct.
Right. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah. So anything you'll add to this particular breakdown? Let's say this particular podcast, and we say, okay, podcast episode, we say YouTube video, we said LinkedIn clips, Instagram or TikTok, blog posts, or newsletter. Yeah, and newsletter could go out in email. So then this becomes email content. Anything else you will add to that?
Yeah, no, nothing else really. I mean, and it all depends on what your strategy is and who you're talking to. It really is so specific. It really is so very specific. And that is why you have to sit down and work it out or talk to someone who knows. You could work it out yourself and you have a framework you could follow, but it really is so very specific. And the next thing is that it does not stay the same. It would change in the life of your business. So I just want to plug that in there. But for us, we're missing a few parts, like we're missing the email part, which we're trying to get right these days. But yeah, what you're saying there is very accurate.
Another thing that businesses should look out for, especially in the Caribbean, is WhatsApp. I think that is kind of a little underutilized social media platform, digital marketing platform that people could use. You can build communities on WhatsApp. You can build a certain level of engagement on WhatsApp. So I would throw that into the mix. It might be smaller and more pointed, but a lot of times it's somebody you probably already met. That's how you got their number, and that's how you have them on WhatsApp. It could be a little wild west, because remember, your WhatsApp would be your family, friends, plus your business acquaintances. And so you could do channels and broadcast the channels and so on, but just be careful that sometimes you might be talking to people who are not in your target audience whatsoever. But I would throw that in as another platform that we could probably look at getting some content for, whether it is stories or a broadcast post or just a notification. Hey guys, we have a new podcast episode up, and paste the link and people will check it out. Yeah.
You have a WhatsApp group, right, with your past students?
Yeah, I have a WhatsApp group, relatively small, of all past students that I would have taught marketing or digital marketing. Now, I'm saying all. It's open to all. Some people have left as these things are not everybody joined. But it's building all the time, because every time I have a new class that successfully completes the program, I would invite them to it. So, yeah. So I would from time to time mention this podcast so that they can check it out, share links with them, and so on.
Right.
Yeah. So let me kind of switch gears and talk about a couple of tools that you might utilize. I know a big one that we use and you use a lot is Descript. Could you tell us a few things that Descript help you with, apart from just editing the video?
Right. So Descript has a lot of excellent features. A lot of it is surrounding editing, like making the editing more efficient, like in terms of one-touch mixing of cameras. If you have multicams, fixing the audio in the edits, it's actually, everything is AI powered now. So saying AI powered doesn't really mean anything different. So you could do your social posts inside there. You can do you could tell it specifically what you want to social post for, and it'll create the captions for you and all those different things. So it's really a very useful tool. When it first came out, it was quite revolutionary because you could edit the video by text. It would read the transcript, translate it, and you could delete parts of the video by deleting the text. And that was revolutionary. Obviously, anything like that, which is just a feature, people will copy it. So now people have copied that feature inside of Descript. But the main thing about Descript is that it saves you time because of its editing features. Because there's an editor.
Right. Okay. So Descript is subscription based. A few affordable packages inside of there. Some competition, well, not really competition. Some other tools you might think about is CapCut. CapCut used to be free.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure the free version is very useful, but it definitely used to be free. That's another option. You also have editing tools coming from Instagram itself. And of course, you could use your on-device editor. So if you have a computer, you could use iMovie. If you have a phone, you could use for simple edits. The idea is the tools that are available for people who are not professional. So if you use Descript, but if we really wanted, we can just give everything over to Nicholas, who would edit it in Final Cut Pro.
Correct. Yeah. And that's a good distinction to make. So, and you don't have to do it like this. It's just how it developed in our company. Because I am also someone who creates content, our commercial jobs are not necessarily touched by me. We have one person who edits that. And if we have more work than that, we get other people to edit. But every piece of content that I make, I tend to edit it myself. These days, I'm giving Nicholas some other extra things to do because of the type of editing that we want to do. But we try to separate what is done for client work and what is our marketing that we do. And that's just how it has developed, So maybe in the future, we'll have teams that could do both. But right now, I think it works better that way.
Yeah. So that software is going to allow you to create clips, do your voice, not your voiceovers, your closed caption, and then you can use things like AI to create text. So Descript will also transcribe for you. But let's say you don't have Descript, you're not doing that. A lot of people have Google, ChatGPT, Claude can do transcriptions for you. So then you can take that, turn it into an article, then use some other AI to help you rewrite the article. Please do rewrite. Don't let the AI do everything. You gotta go in and check it out. Make sure that everything is okay. Make sure it sounds like you. So those are some of the software tools and workflow tools that you can use to repurpose some of your content. Yeah?
Yeah. So on our, just to add to what you're saying, on our itsgoodtorelate.com blog, every week we do an AI assisted summary of the podcast. So one of the things I felt is that nobody wants to read a transcript. They would just listen to the podcast if you're going to do that. But the AI assisted summary is basically me giving it a big prompt that asks for specific things in the podcast. And obviously after that, like you said, Ayinde, I would review it. I would make adjustments. I would add in things that I promised to add during the actual podcast. And at the end, we'll have a really excellent article of what we spoke about.
Right. So let me just kind of go back and regrade Relate Studios on this particular repurposing map, zero waste. So we do have a podcast, lives on Spotify and YouTube. So we get 1 point for that. 2 points actually, because Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, we do LinkedIn posts. So, and those posts will have captions. So we take some text and repurpose it as captions. Instagram and TikTok, that's a no right now. Blog posts, that's a yes. Newsletter and email, that's a no. So I would say we batten about 70%, maybe 65%. So we're not doing too badly in repurposing. So we're preaching this to as a good strategy for people who don't have the time or inclination to create new content every week. You take some existing long form content and figure out ways to repurpose it. And we've given you some, so you could repurpose video as text, you could repurpose long form as short form, and you can take all of that content and use it in your email campaigns. And so that you have content out there on a steady basis without necessarily having to kill yourself running on a hamster wheel to produce that content.
Can I speak to a part of what you said there?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this would increase our grade or not, but a real key part of what we do is that we're doing this live. we're doing it live. So so really it gives us the space and the freedom to record in a way that doesn't bog us down. So we come with our topics, we prepare from beforehand, and we record. Whatever happens at the end, it's out into the world already. Right? It does go onto LinkedIn. It does go onto Instagram, but Instagram is literally live. The Instagram doesn't save it because we're on Instagram right now. Hello, everybody on Instagram. And it does go to my personal Facebook page, which, by the way, after 30 days, 30 or 60 days, Facebook deletes live streams. It doesn't keep it anymore. So I would just add that into our grading score that we do go to LinkedIn as well, because this is live to 3 different platforms.
Right. And I guess one of the things you're kind of highlighting there is your core platform should be something that you could do on a steady basis. That in particular should be something that you could accomplish on a consistent basis, because it kind of drives every other thing inside of your ecosystem. Yeah, so that's a good point. All right, so let me just kind of wrap up. Our 70% score is good. I think we can do better, and we're going to work on getting some of that other stuff out. Particularly email, I think, needs to move to the 4 inside of this whole zero waste repurposing map.
Yeah.
So remind us what we learned today, Juma.
What did we learn today? We learned that a couple of things. Let me start with what you spoke about. We learned that there are ways to make it easier to create content if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of resources. There are ways to make it easier. And one of the big ways is that you can obviously create a long form, and you have to map this thing out. It's not whatever happens. So I often look at people who create short form content and they're constantly on what we call the content hamster wheel making things. It can be easier if you think about what your core piece of content is going to be and what is produced out of that, and then you map that thing out. So you decide on the distribution channels, you decide on how often you're going to do it, and there is a exact way to do that, which we'll probably talk about in a different podcast. But in terms of your strategy, it's very important that you figure out, okay, at the very least, what's at the core and where do you want those things to go thereafter? How do you want to convert it? If it's into a blog post, if it's short form text, whatever it is. And what we learn about transformation-based client testimonials, I'm still having a hard time saying that, is that there is a way to do it and you should do it. And next week we'll look into how you actually do it and look at the questions behind that.
Yeah, so we look forward to that. And thank you for everyone for listening. And really need to get an outro.
you need to get a sign off so bad. You need to get a sign off so bad. All right, so let me say.
I looked up the Russell Simmons outro because I always liked his outro, nice and simple, but he says good night. And I was like, I didn't think we could say goodnight.
Yeah, maybe not. Oh, but don't forget, people, if you want to get all the articles, the AI-assisted summaries, and all the podcast episodes, please go to itsgoodtorelate.com where you can get all those different things. And if you have any questions or feedback, you can send it to podcast@itsgoodtorelate.com, and we will reply to those.
That's very good.
Well, you could just take that if you want.
I could take that. I could say, like, share and follow.
Like, share, subscribe, all of the above or below.
Press the bell button.
Yeah.
So we'll continue working on the outro. It'll get good just now. We have a few more weeks left in the year. So by the time we hit Christmas, we should have a perfect outro, including music and
the like.
We can remember. All right. So thanks for coming out. Good conversation, Juma. We'll talk.